everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Places We'll Go show. It's a first today. We have a dame, our first ever dame on the show. We have Dame Cilla Snowball. Very welcome, Cilla. Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
We had a little bit just before about how we should address you, but we agreed on Cilla. So there we go. But fabulous to have a dame on. Well, actually, not only a dame, but also CBE. So CBE in 2009. So you sort of collect the accolades as you go. And I would say genuinely you are famous beyond this small world of marketing and advertising. So let me just sort of give everyone a bit of some of Cilla's path. Currently, Cilla is Governor of the Wellcome Trust, a non-exec of Derwent London, but previously has done all sorts of amazing things. Chair of the Women's Business Council, Chair of the Advertising Association in 2012, 2015, Trustee of Comic Relief, that must have been amazing. And actually in Management Today in 2020, wrote a great article, Top 10 Tips on the Trials and Tribulations of Going Plural. And if anybody out there is thinking about that pivot, I would thoroughly recommend that. But this, of course, was all built on a stellar career in the advertising industry, starting at Ogilvy and Mather, but then 26 years at AMV BBDO, both the CEO and chair through some of the halcyon years up until 2018. Incredibly awarded, loads of recognition, well loved, a bit of a legend, shall we say, and also many congratulations, a new grandmother, I understand, Cilla. So you're fabulously welcome on the show.
Thank you. That it all seems so busy when you just put it all together. Obviously, all of those things were done in bits, not all at once. So yeah, it's good to hear it, but yeah, being a granny is probably the best bit of all.
There you go. There's my life in a flash, but it sounds pretty impressive to me, to be fair. Richie.
Cilla, it's such a pleasure to have you on and to finally get to meet you. I've heard you speak on a number of occasions, so it's great.
Oh, it's great to see you, Richie.
Great to be chatting. I really want to pick up on, just what you've just said there. Through all the accolades and through everything that, you described, you talked about it as being busy. You kind of, suggested that the best bit was being a grandmom. I'd love to just pick up on that. And maybe contrast the life that you had with all that busyness, but versus, like you say, a grandmom at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us are juggling being parents and friends and colleagues with busy work jobs, and my family's always been the most important thing. So I've got 3 kids and 1 little grandson who's 7 months old now. And I think for me, provided family has been at the centre of everything, the career bits have been an added bonus. I always wanted to work, but family and the grounding of family and the joy of family has been the main motivation. And I've been lucky enough to be supported to be able to work and be a mum, and now a grandmum. And I'm very passionate about making that dual responsibility work for men and for women.
Yeah, I mean, you make it sound so effortless, but I mean, you've cut your career in a time when we were so far away from gender equality. And we had Lindsay Clay on last week, and I imagine that was incredibly difficult to juggle at a time when you were sort of fighting lots of conscious and unconscious bias through all those moments. A female chair and a female CEO at a time when that just really wasn't in vogue.
Yeah, I mean, lots of issues in that question. First of all, money. The maths of childcare are horrendous, and if I have any regrets in my career, it's that I didn't take a long enough maternity leave with each of my 3 kids. It was probably 4 months, 5 months, and then 4 months again. But that was a maths issue. I had to get back to start earning, and maternity provision wasn't as great as it is now. And it could be much better now. So the challenge was really making the maths work. And, don't stop me on childcare provision in the UK, because the whole market needs to be addressed and prioritised. And I won't rest until we have tax relief on childcare for everybody. But I think a number of things in the time that I've been working have improved. One of the recommendations we made on the Women's Business Council was to have gender pay gap reporting so that we could track the progress of women in companies. And that was turned into legislation in 2015, as was the right to request flexible working, as was the right to take shared parental leave. So those things would have really helped me when I first started, and are now in legislation. There's loads more we can do, but there are huge obstacles for women in the business still. And, there is still a lot of sexism that needs to be stamped out and dealt with. You've only got to look at last week's AGM at Aviva, where, even the CEO of Aviva has to face sexism, overt sexism, to see that we've still got a long way to go on these issues. We're making steady progress, but it's just not fast enough. But I think what I found in my career journey was that I had lots of support at work and lots of support at home and happy, healthy children. And that combination made it work just. But if any of those things had wobbled, particularly the happy, healthy children bit, I would have been in trouble.
Cilla, there'll be a lot of anxiety around from women who are currently juggling some of those dynamics that you describe, and ultimately having a fear that they will not be able to fulfill their career or potential career aspirations because they feel the need to almost the impossible balance being juggled around these various things. And I guess, you've been able to successfully navigate some of those dynamics and obviously continue as a thought leader and an influencer in this area. So I'd just love to get your thoughts and perhaps some guidance from you if someone's listening out there today who is juggling those dynamics. What would you say to them to encourage them to kind of keep going and to try and maintain that sort of balance?
Yeah, I think the advice I would give is that the company you choose to work for is the most important decision of all, because you can't juggle all these different responsibilities in a company that isn't family friendly. You just can't, and you're wasting your time. So the maths of it is both a company priority and a government responsibility. But I think what I've learned is that, when I went on maternity leave 33 years ago, I had to negotiate my pay. I had to negotiate as if no one had ever been pregnant in the agency before, when of course they had. Now we've got much better policies, much fairer policies, much more evenly distributed childcare. I'm really proud of the fact that my son is now taking shared parental leave. He's a complete zombie, by the way, but he's taking shared parental leave and looking after the baby while my daughter-in-law's gone back to work. So I think finding companies that understand the juggle and will support you in the juggle as mine supported me is the advice I would give. And spelling out what you want and what you need. I learned that quite late in my career, that actually saying what you want in a polite way is better than politely staying quiet about what you want. Not in an entitled, spoiled brat way, but in a way that explains what you're going through, what you need. And I think the pandemic has helped release and demonstrate the benefits of flexible working. We've been talking about it. It was certainly one of our policies and recommendations in the Women's Business Council, but we've now got evidence that this can work for men and women. But sympathy to anyone managing the juggle at the moment. It's incredibly hard and it's incredibly expensive, and there's so much more we could do.
Yeah, here. Now, Cilla, the leader, you're a leader in so many regards. I mean, even how you casually popped in there that, campaigning for changes in legislation, for example, but on so many levels. So I'm really interested just to understand what you think makes you a great leader.
I think I had opportunity. I think I had drive, opportunity, and support. And as I said earlier, I landed in the right place with bosses who supported me, gave me responsibility, and a team that were energetic about driving business growth and creative success. So I think it really comes down to opportunity. I was able to flourish and be given responsibility. I mean, I went into advertising originally because I thought it would have lots of variety. I wanted to do something creative and comms led, and I thought it would have variety. And actually it proved to be the case that no 2 days are the same. There's lots of opportunity domestically, internationally. The technology that exploded during my time in the business opened up huge opportunities. So it's the old thing that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. And I was given the opportunities to have a go, and then blessed with a team that put up with me, frankly.
Oh, Cilla, genuinely, it's quite an incredible journey, and actually, what I reflect from what you're saying is that you're almost talking about the external opportunity that you had as opposed to the characteristics, which is very humble, I think, in that sense. But 27 years at AMV BBDO, and certainly during your reign, I mean, by far, even today, being hailed as one of the best agencies in the world. But certainly when you were there, my God, I mean, it was the bee's knees, and without saying it, and goes without saying, really. But kind of going back to a bit of a dual sort of thought here, because I sort of was agency side for a while as well, and I found it notoriously demanding, and actually the clients are extraordinarily demanding. And I guess I want to get a sense from you in the context of work-life balance, juggling all those balls you had, juggling the client's demand, whilst trying to push an organization forward. No easy feat. And I just wondered if you could talk to that. How were you able to manage that whole sort of?
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot to do. These are big jobs. You'll feel this, Mark will feel this. We're here at 7:45 on a Friday morning, for goodness sake. These are busy jobs. And why are we doing this at 7:45 in the morning? Why did I start my working day, in the early hours each day? Because there's a lot to do. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of work that goes into running a successful business. So again, I had energy, support, a team, brilliant clients, sure, demanding clients, but brilliant, supportive clients who were aligned. It's all been it's a career that runs on, it's a business that runs on adrenaline and creativity and ideas, and it moves very, very fast, and there isn't time to sit around and think, oh, this is busy, I've got an awful lot to do today. You just dive in and get on with it. And I think in a good organization, you've got broad shoulders of management where it doesn't just come up to a pyramid. There's very broad shoulders of great people who are delivering happily. Now, we didn't get everything right. You make it sound like it was all a breeze and everything went well. It didn't. We made mistakes. We got some things wrong. We learn from those mistakes and pick up and dust down and get back on the horse. But it's joyous. I don't think I ever felt I was working hard and resented the hard work that goes with it. But I don't think there are any shortcuts in business. I think you have to be all in, not to the exclusion of everything else, but you have to be all in and give it everything you've got.
Yeah, you get what you give, high input, high output, all of that. Now, during that time, though, you will have worked with some amazing clients on some amazing projects, which obviously makes it easier because that's the fun. Can you tell us about some of the best work, some of the best clients maybe that you were involved with?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky and great opportunity. I can also name every client that fired us, every client that put us up for pitch, every could have avoided. So not that I hold grudges against any of that. I take full responsibility. But no, we worked, and AMV still works on some really prestigious brands like Guinness. Guinness was an absolute joy. It was really hard. It looks easy, but it's really hard. But brave clients, their mission is for the advertising to be as good as the product, and always has been. And that kind of pursuit of excellence, pursuit of innovation was fantastic. And one of the standout moments of happiness was when we won the Cannes Grand Prix for one of the Guinness films. But the moment I heard we'd won the Grand Prix, I was standing in Pizza Express picking up pizzas for Friday night supper for the kids. And my client was also, ironically, in another part of town, in another pizza place, picking up pizza for his kids. And we were laughing while all our teams were having great time in Cannes celebrating the win, and we were home with the kids. But Guinness was a huge privilege. Over the years, working on The Economist, which is a client that Abbott Meads had for, must be coming up to about 40 years now, and reflecting the dynamics of the business context and business environment with very striking, intelligent work was a huge privilege. And actually at the time, the work we did on the government was just amazing to work on. All the anti-smoking work, all the road safety work, that was again really hard to get right, to get the insight from tons of data and then execute those things that literally saved lives. So there are lots of high points, but tribute to people from Mars and Sainsbury's and Asda and Walkers who entrusted us with their brands over so long and gave us so much to support, to do great work that was good for us and good for them. It was a massive creative and economic multiplier for them.
Cilla, we talk about the high points, and you've clearly reached the highest point in the industry. And I would love to get your take on some of the key inputs, characteristics, or things that you may have done to kind of get there. And whether there is, we have lots of agency people who will be listening in right now, and perhaps some advice on, if they're trying to forge a successful career in this industry, maybe what are some of the things that you would give, what would you say to them?
Well, I think listening is terribly important. I think you very rarely have the answer yourself. And if you're not listening carefully, you won't find the answer. And linked to that, teamwork, that getting diverse perspectives from the team, enabling teams to speak up about things and share their views and say what they want, I think is important. Hard work we've talked about. I think being prepared to admit mistakes and move on quickly and learn from them. one of the things I learned, I mean, I've always felt that business is about relationships. I've always believed that. But I learned that clients and colleagues don't always tell you the bad stuff. And you have to probe the bad stuff. And I think this is very important in a kind of speak up environment as well. But we learned, for instance, on client satisfaction, that if we asked how things were going with a client, they would be more generous than if a third party asked how things were going. So that's all part of listening and learning. So I think those are the things I would recommend in order to progress. Keep your feet on the ground, keep humble, listen carefully, make sure everyone contributes, probe the difficult questions, because people, however empathetic you think you are, people may not tell you difficult stuff. And enjoy it. You know, I remember once at the very busiest point of my career where I think I was MD of AMV and I was president of WACO, and juggling the two was about the limit at the time. So that must have been 99, 2000. And one of my WACO friends said to me, "Are you enjoying it?" And it was such a good question. I was thinking, oh gosh, I hadn't thought about enjoying it. I'm just doing it. And of course I was, but it was a really good prompt to remind you that, particularly as a leader, I think, just getting it done isn't enough. You know, leaders cast a very big shadow, good and bad. And your enjoyment is infectious. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to learn from good leaders and bad, and whatever the challenge, I think, and however busy you are, remembering to protect and prioritize the quality of your everyday life is really important.
Wow, so many great tips and insight, and you're right. I mean, it's to enjoy things, sometimes you have to remind yourself of that, otherwise it's just gone in a flash, and that's regrettable. Cilla, you talked a bit about mistakes and learning from them fast. Everybody makes them, you, me, Richie, everybody. So what are some of the mistakes that have been pivotal in terms of changing your perspective or your direction, the biggest learning mistakes, if you like?
Yeah, too many to mention when it comes to mistakes, but I think being able to admit them is probably the biggest learning I've had. I think the whole area about client and colleague relationships, that you think you know, but you don't know. I remember a client once coming to me with a red card, like, "We're putting you up for pitch," and that was our mistake. We hadn't delivered, we hadn't seen it coming. That's rule one as an agency. You have to know where you stand with your clients. And this client was so lovely. I said, "Look, I take responsibility, but I would really appreciate it if you could switch it to a yellow card, not a red card, so that I've had warning." And she said, "Right, I'll go away and think about that." And God bless her, she came back and said, "Actually, we didn't give you a warning, so we'll change it into a yellow card," and then we fixed it. I've tried that with other people and it hasn't worked, by the way. So I'm eternally grateful to that person. But I think the mistakes have come by failing to admit them and pushing on, chasing money, sometimes, repitching something that you can't win, and no one's being honest about whether you've got a fair chance, and putting everyone through that when deep down that the odds are slim. Those kinds of mistakes. And then I think a sense of being someone that people can tell you when you're making mistakes as well, being open to feedback and open to somebody saying you're an idiot, or you're being too much, or the pace is just too great. I always remember a 360 appraisal I got from one of my account directors who said, working for you is when you're in manic overdrive, it's really quite tiring. And I tease her about this to this day, but again, it really helped me. I was pushing too hard, not pushing her too hard, but I was so visibly in manic overdrive that everyone else felt they had to be in manic overdrive. So I think learning from mistakes, taking feedback on the chin, probing people on things rather than waiting for them to come to you with things would be the lessons I've learned from my mistakes, and probably not dwelling on them too much. I mean, Omnicom were brilliant at giving leadership training, and I vividly remember one of the training courses where the session opened with a declaration that leaders make mistakes. And to be honest, I had put all my mistakes to that point down to me being a crap leader, and just the revelation that actually mistakes are part of leadership, and you have to learn from them, admit them, and move on was actually really reassuring. But clearly you can't make huge ones, and you've got to learn from them and put them right. But often what you put right is so much stronger, than the learning you would have had if you hadn't made the mistake. But I think one of the mistakes I made on my mistakes was dwelling on them too much and taking them too personally. But there's really no point. I remember The Economist had an article about something that had gone wrong in the Japanese car business. And they were in crisis management, and they said, when you make a mistake, it's like a cow falling in a ditch, and you've got to do three things. One, get the cow out of the ditch. Two, work out why the cow fell in the ditch. And three, make sure the cow never falls in the ditch again. And it was a really, really good, clear piece of insight from The Economist on mistakes, that cows fall in ditches, but you have to get them out, understand why, and make sure they don't again. And I found that quite helpful.
I often, and by the way, I loved your anecdote around repitching. And I think sometimes we all hold on to the straws, as it were, when actually maybe it's easier just to let them go. And as you say, move on from some of those things. But I wonder if it is typically born, and often mistakes are typically born out of pressures that we often have at that moment in time, which then kind of make us kind of do certain things and act in certain ways, which then perhaps, later down the track, we kind of go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that sort of thing. And I guess just to that extent, we as people working in organizations often don't see the pressures that are on our leadership and CEOs coming from all angles. And I just wondered if there is any insight around perhaps some of the pressures that you do face at the top that are perhaps not obvious for people working in those organizations at the time.
Yeah, what a good question. Well, I'm not quite sure I buy the sort of it's lonely at the top thing, because aspects of it are, because you can't share everything, obviously. But there are good mentors, sponsors, colleagues around to help you share things. So you should never feel lonely at the top. And I know we all mentor a lot, and we have lots of contacts and friends in the business. So I think the pressures on leadership on leaders can often be shared by other leaders saying, oh, pull yourself together, this will pass, or you're doing the right thing, or you've been an idiot and you need to do this, that, or the other. And I also think the problem is compounded by the fact that you can't let them show. I think as leaders, you've got to show a kind of plausible optimism, and you can't let the pressure show and show you're tired, or say you're tired, or you've got to be, it's the shadow point again, you've got to be energetic. But I think the how are you question is pretty useful, whoever you are. And I think remembering to ask that of leaders and wait for the answer is important. And support leaders and tell leaders when they're doing something well as when they're doing something badly.
Sure.
Yeah. So such good advice. There's a tremendous sense of calmness about you, and I'm struggling to see the manic overdrive. Just as an observation, I mean, there's almost a disconnect. Has your transition into a plural career changed your cadence and your perspective dramatically, or is this just a sort of been a continuum?
Isn't that an interesting question? I think as an exec, in my career journey, I've been executive to chief exec to chairman to running a company to running a group, and you're in having all the answers, finding all the solutions mode. As a non-exec, that changes completely. You don't have to have all the answers, you have to have all the questions. And you can bring in your expertise, but your role is to challenge and support. And so you're in listening mode, and you are approaching things independently. You're not owning all the problems, you're looking at them and assessing problems and opportunities and asking good questions. And I've had to learn to not take the wheel and not rush to solutions, but to probe teams on how to get to the best answers. And it is a shift of focus. And actually, I got some early training in this, because in my day job at AMV, my bosses were really good about saying, yes, you can go and campaign for women in the Women's Business Council, and you can run WACL, and you can sit on charity boards and learn about being a non-exec. So now that I'm a full-time non-exec, I know what I'm doing, and I've had that run up. But the manic overdrive bit was when you're in full-on overdrive, doing lots of things, juggling lots of balls at once. You don't have the luxury of sitting back and thinking. Well, you think, but you don't have the luxury of sitting back, analysing. It's a totally different skill, being a non-exec and being a good one, because you have to be useful in that challenge and support, not irritating and idiotic. I mean, you will deal with your own boards and know the value of a good trustee or a good non-exec board member. You chair the front foot board, Mark, don't you, for the AA? So you will know the value of a useful non-exec and one that's just a pest and annoying. So I'm trying to be the former.
And I think there's not to put light on all the professional achievements and professional boards you're on, but I suspect there's no greater non-exec role than being a parent of kids who have flown the nest. And I wonder, we talk about the role of questions and good questions. So perhaps what are some of the good questions that you ask of your kids as you help them navigate their way through their journey?
Oh, Richie, they don't listen to anything I say. You assume that my kids listen to my advice and have respect for me. Of course they don't. They think I'm the biggest idiot that ever walked the earth.
Oh, but you must still ask some probing questions, if not give them the answers.
Oh gosh, I think it's a very different dynamic now. You know, they're all around the 30, 33, 31 and 28. So they're making their own decisions now. But questions around what they want and what's important and what's a priority. We all found it quite hard in the pandemic not being able to be together, and thank goodness for the ability to get together on Zoom and connect like that. But no, I don't think there are any sort of killer questions that I ask my children. It's much easier mentoring people because they listen. Kids, well, other people's kids might listen, but not my own.
There's the point, Richie. So Cilla's let you down lightly, that you can be, because Richie's got very young kids, you can be a hero to everybody in the world, including many other people's kids, but sadly not your own. It just doesn't work like that.
Oh,
with
man.
young kids, you're in the best bit now. They worship you, but then they realize you're an idiot. And
thank you guys for telling me what's to come. I was looking forward to this.
enjoy the
when you can, Richie.
admiration.
So Cilla, such an illustrious career, and you've across so many different paradigms. What's maybe the thing or a couple of things that you would say you're most proud of?
Family, obviously. I'm proud of all the people that flourished at AMV and that have still flourishing at AMV, or have gone on and flourished in other places in other walks of life. Proud of business relationships that have turned into friendships. Proud of the fact that it's not all about money and contracts and transactions, that, you know, business relationships endure and become friendships, and proud that those continue in a kind of trusting, mutually beneficial way. I think I'm most proud of the youngsters that succeed. Actually, I get so much satisfaction from mentoring. I also mentor at my university and mentor final year students going into the world of employment, and I'm super proud. We have a kind of alumni mentoring program that I started and sit on still, and watching the pressures that final year students are under to get their degree and get a job is so much harder than when we all did it. And so I'm super proud of their success and their tenacity in getting jobs. So is that enough things to be proud of?
Well, absolutely, and so certainly that is so close to my heart and what we are trying to achieve at the School of Marketing, and in particular sort of carving out that alternative career route with regard to apprenticeships, as giving young people a new avenue to get into and thrive within an organization. And perhaps apprenticeships typically over-index in people who may not have had that opportunity to go into higher education and university. So this is another way in which they can seek professional careers, as opposed to the milk round, as it were.
Yeah, and the effort that goes in and the pressure and stress of, you know, getting qualifications and getting jobs. You know, we can offer apprenticeships, but we need to do so much more. And, you know, certainly reaching out into the world of academia to understand how to motivate and how to support them in getting a job. One of my mentees must have sent me about 17 versions of his CV before it was right. And without that mentoring, he would have minimized his chances. So
this is it. And I think people don't necessarily recognize that not everybody has somebody who will look at the 17th iteration of their CV. And I think we as an industry, by the way, we're not very good at this at all. In fact, 58% of marketing and advertising functions do not have an apprentice, which is a worrying stat, not necessarily from an apprenticeship perspective, but what it then means for diversity and inclusion. It's almost like a metric or a trigger point as opposed to, the way we should be thinking about this. So we do need to make massive change in this area.
And I think we've also got to be more courteous in the way we deal with it. What I'm hearing from my mentees in their final year is that some companies don't even reply, don't even acknowledge, I'm really sorry, we haven't got anything, but good luck, no reply, not knowing, applications going in, not knowing where their applications go. So I think courtesy and technology should be able to fix that.
Yes, without doubt. And we could talk for hours on this. I guess I suspect it's a bit of a passion point for both of us, but we'll move on for now. And I suspect coming up, encroaching to the last question, really. So you've clearly been able to navigate the shores of corporate life into senior management, into now a pluralistic sort of perspective and career. I just wondered, is there any other stone left to unturned here? What would you say are sort of some of your key goals that you've still got to maybe go for, or maybe not? Maybe being a grandmom is where it's at.
Yeah, well, more grandchildren definitely as well. So the nagging has started with all three kids. No, I want to keep learning and to be able to move from the world of marketing and advertising into the world of science and commercial property is teaching me so much, particularly pandemic issues, the importance of science to get us out of the pandemic, the role of offices in a new hybrid working arrangement. Those are meaty issues that are keeping me busy and inspired, and I'm learning tons. So I suppose the goals are to keep learning, keep listening, and giving back in gratitude for all the amazing opportunities I've had in the business. But 4 years out of the business is a very long time. It's because of the pandemic, it's been in two chunks. But I don't belong to the marketing and advertising world anymore. I belong because of friendships, but I'm not working in that sector anymore. I'm working in science and in property, and I will keep pushing at that, and I will try and push for better legislation for women, better protection for women, and better financial support on childcare, which are still unfinished business.
Yes, please. I'm in the midst of that right now. We need that.
Okay. Well, you can join my crusade.
I will. Oh my God! Tell you what, I'm with you. Both
okay.
I know it firsthand.
Cilla, love that actually. The fact that you've achieved so much and you've still got a growth mindset and want to keep learning. I'm going to disagree with you on one thing, which is that I think you'll forever be part of the marketing and advertising industry in terms of the shadow and legacy you had. And we didn't even get to talk about the Wellcome Trust and the amazing work they do. But I mean, that's a signal of how rich and wonderful it's been. If I think about what I've taken out of it, an overriding sense of your humility and ability to be humble despite your amazing achievements. But underneath that, still a burning passion that has probably been critical. What can we say? You've got to be all in. You've got to chuckle when your crowning moment is in the context of collecting pizza whilst everyone else is celebrating. But again, that's the signal of the humility. We talked quite a bit about mistakes, actually, moving on quickly, admitting to them, being honest, and not dwelling on too much. We also talked a bit about pressure as well. There's no need to feel alone, but you do need to keep a level of plausible optimism. I like that. Very interesting to get your perspective on the flip to non-exec. It's not about the answers, it's about the question, it's about listening. It's about not owning and being independent and probing, having to be useful, not be a pest. We're all idiots as parents, yeah, we can't escape that. But what a sense of generosity, both in this interview, but also in everything that you've achieved. And you talked at the end about giving back. That was sort of synonymous with the generosity that I think is inherent of you. And it was lovely to hear about the things you're proud of. And I think you've got so much to be proud of. So Dame Cilla, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. What a lovely experience.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and lovely to chat to both of you, even at this very early hour of the day.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So just the last thing from me, I think the one thing where we kicked off and at the beginning is such a powerful thought that you said, and I quote, family is the most important thing. My career has been an added bonus. And by the way, right now, all too often, people think about this in completely the opposite way, which comes at great sacrifice, great mental health, broken homes, and all sorts of things, which I think we need to fundamentally move the needle on in order to have a happy life, and in doing so, have a happy career as well. But that's it in that order, as you've really articulated so well. So, it's just an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have been spent time with this morning. Really is. And thank you for your time.